DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the DSPN, people. Again, as of next week, we'll be running our full podcast, which is a 45-minute, 50-minute highlights show every day. And when I say highlights, we're just talking about the biggest sports stories. We have a couple of guest interviews, do some debate, bit of a chat, rant and rave, all of that kind of thing. In the meantime, what we're doing every day via the DSPN YouTube channel is putting up an interview or two for you to enjoy and peruse. And if you do, and you are, click the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 5,000 YouTube subscribers as quick as possible. We're all over social media as well, and that is Martin Devlin _DSPN on Instagram and TikTok. You won't see a lot of dancing, but you'll get a bit of sports opinion if that's what you're into. Our special guest today, Tony Johnson from Sky Sport. You know TJ, you know his voice. He's been at the network for best part of a couple of decades, probably longer now. We worked together a long time. Radio Sport and News Talk ZB. I'll say Happy New Year, Tony. We haven't seen each other, have we, mate? So,
Great to see you, man.
Look, it's another huge year for rugby, and especially for the All Blacks, obviously with this massive test against South Africa looming. And Tony's come up with 5 big things to watch out for in rugby in 2025. In no particular order, but this is how they run. Lions tour, All Blacks box at Eden Park, and we do get to play them twice. Is the Richie Mo'unga saga over? Super Rugby this year and beyond, because remember, we've dropped a team. We're going to get a team back. And, of course, the Women's World Cup. And we are the champions, but we've got to go to England and play that very formidable side later in the year. Can we actually just start with number 3, given that this story busted yesterday? And Pat McKendry, our good old mate from TVNZ, good on you, Pat, for getting that story. Look, there are so many moving parts to this, aren't there? It kind of concerned me when everything I've read that between New Zealand Rugby, Toshiba, his club, him as agent, that, you know, we can't get some kind of deal together. But then the more I think about it, the more I think that maybe that's just because, and when I say it's because it's not actually meant to be.
Could be. I'm sure the story's not over. I'm sure there is
there's more to it.
Chapter to come. Yeah, I mean, he's halfway through his contract now. Scott Robertson is very keen to get him back. He's made that quite public. To me, this is a story with 4 sides to it.
Four
okay. Sides.
We've got a cube happening here, people.
So obviously you've got the All Black coach.
And he's been very public about this.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a moment too, because that is a bit of an issue with me. Firstly, he wants him back because he sees him as being central to unlocking the best from this All Black team, the potential of this All Black team. But then you've got a club who've spent a lot of money to get him over there, a club that probably doesn't want to just go, yeah, okay, you can have him just because you want him. That's not how they roll. Then you've got the player himself, and we really haven't heard.
No, we haven't heard from him.
No, and he's wise to stay out of it.
Yeah.
But you also have a fourth side to this, which is other players that are going to be affected by this. And Harry Plummer has already, I think it's been reported that a factor in Harry Plummer deciding to go offshore were the moves to bring back Richie Mo'unga. Well, where's the opportunity going to be for me? Right. But you also think, well, how's this affecting guys like Damien McKenzie and Bowden Barrett, who have been wearing the number 10 jersey over the last year? That the coach wants this guy to come in. And also, how does that affect other players? Like, for example, Sean Stevenson, who recently sought to get out of his contract with the Chiefs. They've let him go for a handful of games. They made some sort of compromise there. He's sort of thinking, well, if Richie Mo'unga is going to come back, that means that Barrett, McKenzie are probably going to be spending more time at fullback, and Will Jordan's there, so where's the opportunity for me?
Right, okay, yep. So,
as I say, story with 4 sides to it, Martin, and I'm not surprised that it's stalled. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets opened up again at some stage over the next year.
I suppose what surprises me is that, normally with New Zealand Rugby, we know when New Zealand Rugby wants something, New Zealand Rugby gets it. When the All Black coach wants something, the All Black coach gets. And Scott Robertson, as you say, been very public about this. In hindsight, has that been a great move from him?
Well, on one hand, it's refreshing that you've got an All Black coach who's prepared to be public and tell everyone what he's thinking, what he wants. I think he's looking for a bit of populist support there along the lines of, either getting a player released from a contract overseas because he wants him, a very popular, well-regarded player.
And that opens the floodgates to that whole debate, doesn't it, as to whether we select players from overseas, right?
Yeah, and that, which I think he was looking for some movement on that. And my opinion at the time was, maybe after all this time, we should at least be having a discussion on it. Yeah. But the feeling is, and you get it from a lot of the players, recent players, even current players, no, No, we don't do that.
They like the way that it is at the moment.
Yep,
That
yep.
if you want to play for the All Blacks, you stay and play.
Yeah, and that's part of the commitment, but it's also about, rewarding people who've dedicated themselves to being an All Black by staying here in New Zealand. So having thought that maybe, it's time we at least talked about it a year or so ago, I'm now very much of the opinion that it's still the right policy.
Well, I was always, 20 years ago or whatever on Radio Sport, I was always, let's do it. And then I remember Murray Mexted getting hold of us and him coming on the show and saying, no, the All Black jersey is paramount. You've got to stay here and play. And then I've been swayed that way. And then over the last couple of years, when the All Blacks haven't been as strong as we've wanted them to be, I've gone back to let's just pick the best players we can. In terms of Richie Mwanga, though, just quickly on this, is he that much of a standout player that he absolutely makes the difference? And then the pressure that comes with that, all of it, this is perhaps why he's not saying anything. He's not the guy on the white horse. He has made mistakes as an All Black first five. He is a fantastic player. But if he comes back, what does that mean? Oh, great, we're going to win every test match. Now, is that what we were going to be thinking?
Yeah, that's part of, I suppose, the third side of the square that I was talking about before, that by making it public, you create a hell of a lot of expectation on a player that he's going to do just what you say, that those test matches that the All Blacks lost by 4, 5, 6 points last year, that they become wins, that he's the difference. It is a lot of pressure to put on a player. I'm sure he's up to
capable
that.
of handling that, yeah.
Yeah, and as he's matured as a player over the years. But yeah, I just think maybe it's time just to put it to bed for a while, and it probably would be a good thing not to make it a public discussion for a while, and let's just focus on the guys that are available
that are here.
And what we're going to achieve this year.
And the potential behind Barrett and McKenzie as well, because obviously Scott Robertson wasn't completely convinced on either play. He kept swapping them around all year, maybe like the kind of Carlos Spencer, Andrew Mertens thing that went on. Yeah. But this is opening the door. Look, the great thing about the All Blacks over the years is there's always been a young one. There's always been a comer, hasn't there? Yeah. And so now we've got a Super Rugby competition and an NPC this year where we can start looking. It doesn't have to be this year, but we've got a Rugby World Cup in 2027.
Yeah, there is a bit of a gap. I mean,
in terms of experience, of course there is at All Black level,
but there's also some potential there. And Stephen Pettelfeta is a guy that I really love watching play. Silky skills, maybe some similarities
to Pukari,
to Richie Mwanga himself. And then the likes of Peyton Spence, but they're all still very young.
Yeah, very
so,
young.
I think at the moment he's got to back the guys that he's got to do the job.
All right, well, that's topic number one. Topic number two, Lions versus Australia. Anytime the Lions play, you really look forward to the series, don't you? They bring something. It's that added element, that different thing. You don't get to see it too often. What's the less is more thing, which rugby doesn't have a lot of. It gives Australia a hell of an opportunity here to really create something, some momentum of theirs going forward.
Yeah.
And also an interesting point, Tony, with the Six Nations, you were explaining to me just off air, and I'll let you tell the story, that I really like the fact that this is going to happen, and now we think that the thing that's going to happen is going to happen in the Lions team.
Yeah, the Six Nations have decided they will have the 20-minute red card, which I think is a great move. It won't be popular over there because it's an initiative that came from the Southern Hemisphere, and that's always sort of regarded with a great deal of suspicion. But they're going to bring it in, same as we've been playing here. That someone gets red carded, off they go. If it's a really, really bad offence, a really extreme act of foul play, then they cannot.
They don't come back.
They can't come back, and no one can replace them. But for the rest of it, it's a 20-minute period where they're 14 players, and then someone can come on. As I say, there's been some resistance to it. I think there's almost an implication that it's been cooked up by South Africa and New Zealand because it'll advantage them, where if you look at the stats of who's got the most red cards, it doesn't really bear that out. But I think it's a good move, and it's I applaud the work behind the scenes of Phil Davis, the director of rugby at World Rugby, because he's a guy who's at least he's been open to these sorts of things, former Welsh international, and I think it's a great move. But the Six Nations, the subplot, of course, is going to be selection for the Lions. I think France definitely the favourites for that. Big question mark, are Ireland, have they hit their peak? Have they still got more left in them? And what can England do to turn, because the game's in a heck of a state
but
there.
they were that close against us last year. They were that close against Australia last year. And the Six Nations, the thing I love about it, like you love it throws up results that you don't expect. And you don't often get that in international
It's a
rugby.
great competition. And it'll be one worth, I've, the last few weeks, probably like you, I've been watching a lot of tennis and a bit of cricket and the American sport that's going on. But this is the one rugby that I will watch at this time of year.
As far as the Lions in Australia goes, what realistic possibility does Aussie have of making this really competitive? I hope they win that first test only because I want to see it go down to a third
series.
test.
We want a series. Yeah,
exactly.
Look, first of all, I agree with what you were saying before about Lions tours. They're special because we here only see them every 12 years. They only take place every 4 years, and I think they have to keep that. It's such a big money spinner that there's a temptation for them to start playing in the Northern Hemisphere.
Oh, hang on.
Play against France, play in America, all those sorts of things. Let's keep this tradition intact, shall we? Lions tour every 4 years. A player might only have a chance to play, probably would only play them once in their career.
Yeah, maybe twice, maybe that at the most.
Which makes it, so special. Epic series always seems to be the way. Always controversy. You go way back to the 1970s, which, well, you don't. But,
I do.
Well, do you?
77 was the first one that I remember because they came to our school, St. Pat's Silverstream, and they trained because the field was below the road. So the first test was at Athletic Park.
Yeah.
So they came out to Upper Hutt to play or to train there so that they couldn't be seen. Because in those days, they didn't just put up fences and things. So we were all allowed out of school to watch these guys train. And I remember that tour, Tony, because they played about 40, 50 games.
They played pretty much everyone. They played combined teams, and I remember going to see them. I went to see them twice in Blenheim, playing Marlborough, Nelson Bays combined, and we got let off school for the day to go and see the game.
Great idea,
which was
people.
awesome.
Yeah.
I remember that test at Athletic Park that you're talking about. Grant Batty's intercept, his last moment, his last, in international
What
rugby.
a player he was.
Playing in a
Remember,
Howland.
and I think it was against the universities, was it, where it was just a mud bath?
Yep. Fran Cotton, the famous photo of Fran Cotton.
Just caked in mud.
Yeah. And
so we got great memories of that.
It was a very wet winter, that one. But, you go back to 74 before that, the 99 call in South Africa, where someone called it 99, just hit the nearest Springbok.
Just run in and belt somebody,
And if you're a skinny winger, well, hit him from behind and then run away.
That's it.
And there's stories of stuff being wrecked and trains and all that sort of
hotels
thing.
And
but
we didn't have cell phones back in those days, people. So it's just stories, okay?
And then more recently, obviously Brian O'Driscoll, justice for Buckies in South Africa, the sort of the meltdown that Graham Henry had to confront with the likes of Austin Healy and Matt Dawson.
That's right.
In the Lions when he took them to Australia, was at 2001. There's always a controversy. And I think one thing that's kind of disappointed me a little bit is the stuff that goes on in the media. Actually, at the last Lions tour here, 2017, by the end of it, I was sick of it.
Well, look, I was working actually at NZME at that time, and that back page was just a disgrace with the red nose on Warren Gatlin, and that was so unnecessary.
Yeah, that was a low point.
And look, honestly, we had larger arguments in the office about not doing that, believe me, and got overruled. And so, 'cause I didn't work for the paper, obviously, I was only on the radio.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was disrespectful.
And so we could no longer hold the
moral high ground.
The moral high ground, where there'd always been a semblance of fairness about the coverage. Going back to the days of DJ Cameron and Terry McLean and what have you, and that exploded that. And we did the sort of things that we'd been scoffing at their media for doing. So, look, I don't expect anything different on this tour. The media stuff, but at least we can sit back and watch it.
Sit back and watch it.
Because we're not that involved. We're just very
enjoy
interested
the games.
bystanders. I'm with you. I hope that they can make a series of it. For one reason, the guy, was it Ben Youngs, who said they might? Why can't they go to South Africa? Why do we can't? That was outrageous.
Paint that across the dressing room wall, Ozzy.
Yeah, Joe Schmidt will have a plan. If he can keep all his best players fit and healthy, and I'm talking about guys like Taniela Tupou, for example, they need him in the front line, not coming on with 20 to go, those sorts of things. If they can keep their best players fit and healthy, Joe Schmidt will have a plan. Lions tours, they can be great things, but they can also unravel. And they have done so spectacularly. So that is, to me, that is the space most worth watching this year.
Look, around about the same time, the All Blacks are going to be playing France as we kick off our season as well, which means that Anzac team is not going to be selected from our current players. Let's make that point. But number 3 on your list is obviously the All Blacks season. And Eden Park looms large because of the history factor, not having lost there, it's our fortress and everything else. But I look at both games against South Africa as a real opportunity. We've lost 4 in a row against them. And we've seen signs at the end of the year, especially last year, where Scott Robertson's taking this team. Look, if we'd won away at France and won away at Ireland last year, we would have finished the year cock-a-hoop, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And so now we're in a position where, to re-establish ourselves in our own minds as much as anything else, those 2 tests are like a de facto World Championship almost, aren't they, down under? And we get them here, and it's so important that I'd like to target winning both of those, not just Eden Park.
Yeah. I suppose the Eden Park one has aroused the most attention because of that winning record that goes back to, 1994. Haven't lost a test match there. Again, was it Andy Good suggesting that the All Blacks had
running
been
scared? Hello.
Come
on, mate.
Since 2013 when they last played there, I think there have been 3 years when there wasn't a Springbok All Black test in New Zealand, for starters, 2 in South Africa, 1 in Australia, where both tests were played in that country. The last time they were in Auckland, All Blacks, they played at Mount Smart for some reason, FIFA World Cup, and the All Blacks won that. And the time before that,
North Harbour was the 57-0.
57-0, yeah.
And we played in Wellington. I think we drew, didn't we draw in Wellington with them?
Could be, yeah.
In a World Cup year? So it's just a myth. The fact that we're not scheduling tests here is just, stop it, mate. Stop it, mate.
But even so, it will be one of the strongest challenges. Will be the strongest challenge to that unbeaten run since the deciding test of the last Lions tour.
2017.
We all know what happened at the end of that.
Yes.
And look, this is a chance, I think, for the All Blacks to take another step forward, because last year, we talked about it when I was on the show at the end of last year, and we were assessing the year, that the test matches they lost, all but one of them, really, one more score, and they could have won it. And I think that's the next step forward that this group has to take. I'm reasonably confident that they can take a step forward this year. And of course, at the end of the year, you've got really what amounts to a Grand Slam tour.
Because Ireland and Chicago.
The fact that it's in Chicago, it's still Ireland.
Yeah.
And, there'd be a reasonable shot at that too if they can progress, if they can just iron out some of the issues that they had and put, that obviously that last quarter curse that they were having for a while, those sorts of things. So
they're not the big boogeyman of a side, though. I just want to make that clear as well. It's not like this side is just... They are amazing. They've won back-to-back World Cups as South Africans. Their results speak for themselves. They're doing what we're so proud of the All Blacks doing, which is winning games that you don't think they can be won. But that doesn't mean that this All Black side can't go out and beat them. And we've got home advantage. So
yeah. I mean, look, they are probably, in terms of their depth, as strong as the Springboks have ever been, in my opinion. Have a lifetime of watching them going back to the very early 70s.
Doesn't that make beating them even better?
Yeah. I mean, the massive forward pack, the way Russie has rewritten the book in terms of how to use the subs bench. I mean, it's controversial, but it's hellishly effective. Mm-hmm. It suits them, and it's quite within the laws of the game.
Oh, yeah.
But they've also got some brilliance in their backline as well.
Tony Brown, look what he's done to them.
Yeah, and he's kind of uncorking all of that as well.
You're right.
So don't make any mistake about it. They will be hard. That's a huge threat. But boy, is that something to salivate about.
To me, it is the single sports fixture for any New Zealand sporting side all year. And that's no disrespect to anyone. That's the All Whites are going to play to go to a World Cup. The women we'll talk about in a second are going to play a World Cup final. I think for most of us, that game, look, I tell you what, tickets are going to go faster than Coldplay at Eden. So, topic number 4, Super Rugby. We're underway on February the 14th, so it's not long before we get into the pre-season of that. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Tone, we're down a team. We've only got 11 teams, but that means that the Aussies have put all of those players, most of them into New South Wales, and so we're expecting them to be a lot stronger. I'm looking at the Indra and thinking, well, what a delight it would be if they could get a home game in the finals, and also who would want to go there and play that? Moana Pacifica have tooled up, and it'll be interesting to see what Artie does. And then you got the Crusaders out back, who Rob Penny we spoke to last year, and he says, put $1 on us this year. We aren't going to have a bad year. You add to that, the Blues want to go back-to-back to prove that they aren't just a one-season wonder. So I've just outlined, we got half a dozen good storylines straight away, haven't we?
Yeah, I think Super Rugby is going to be good, really good this year. I mean, last year, it was a pretty good competition.
I loved it last year, mate.
Yeah, and the viewing numbers were up, the crowd numbers were good towards the end, and I expect there'll be some more progression from that as well
Let's
this
hope
year.
so, right? Yeah.
But, you know, the real issue is it should be a better competition for Australia concentrating their talent. And sadly, they have lost some players, but that's offset by the fact that they're spreading their butter over 4 bits of toast, not 5.
Yep.
And you look at New South Wales Waratahs, where they get Tupou and they get Joseph Suali'i, who's a very exciting player. What does that do for them? I mean, they couldn't do much worse than they did last year, but they will be
They're
better.
not a team in the world doesn't want that guy, mate.
Yeah. So, you know, they need a big year. Because this is the final year of the deal. Australia does need to be more competitive. I think the Reds are building something under Les Kiss as well. The Brumbies, you know, they're always going to be thereabouts, and well, they've got plenty of money to throw at players over in Western Force. So, you know, that's got to be the hope that for Super Rugby to carry on, Australia needs to be strong. Just by getting Ardie, Moana, Pacifica, there's bums on seats.
That's it. You want to tune in to watch just because of that, right?
And it makes them a more competitive
He moves the needle,
team.
no
He
question
absolutely moves the dial. So, yeah, plenty to look forward to. I think the Blues, as you say, will be really hell-bent on going back-to-back. They came up with this Stern Burns beautifully brutal style of winning Super Rugby, and it
pragmatic, and it worked well. Mate.
Yeah. I'd put a place bet on the Chiefs. I just got a funny feeling about the Chiefs this year.
Good call, because, I mean, they'll be disappointed last year. Really disappointed in themselves.
Yeah. So, plenty to look forward to. But, you know, bigger picture, it's a huge year for the future of Super Rugby, because there's a new deal coming up.
And let's just hope crowds, especially as you said, really do pick up. I'd like to get away from the divisiveness of, this sport gets this crowd and this sport gets... I know, but, again, it's a media narrative and it's a clickbait narrative, isn't it? I'd like to celebrate the fact that, God, you can still like going to Eden Park as much as you like going to Mount Smart, as much as you like Auckland FC. You can like all of these things in Auckland. You can go and support your team in 3 different codes, not to mention the netball, not to mention everything else that's going on as well. Why the hell not?
And I think it comes down a lot to marketing, and I don't think they've marketed Super Rugby
No, they never have.
There's also a perception, rightly or wrongly, amongst a lot of people in the public that Super Rugby is just kind of some kind of machine that's there to prepare the All Blacks. It's all about, like everything else in New Zealand rugby, it's really all about the All Blacks.
Right.
And I think we've got to get away from that. I think, marketing, I know that for example, the Blues have started out, let's get a big crowd for the opening game of the season. Let's, first game of the season. Don't wait till the last game. Because as we know, Auckland in particular, and I think it's becoming very general around New Zealand, and maybe it's because the discretionary dollar, you got to be careful with that, but we've become an event crowd.
Oh, certainly.
In New
Absolutely.
Zealand. We want to go to the big events. And at the moment,
where everyone else is going. Where we're
FC
talking about. Yeah, Auckland FC's the
hot item in town. It was the Breakers.
That's right.
That sort of thing. So I think more effective marketing could help in a big way.
And finally, and not finally, but we have a World Championship to defend this year, or to win again this year, and it is the toughest ask of all. That's up at Twickenham against an England side that has just swept all before it since that World Cup final here in New Zealand.
Yeah, the World Cup, it's come around quickly because remember it was put
COVID,
back a year because of COVID, so it was in 2022, so it's really only a 3-year wait. It's in August, I think it opens up in Sunderland. The Stadium of Light. England play their first game, which I think is a brilliant initiative to take the game up into the northeast of England. England, you're right, they are outstanding. New Zealand are the defending champions. England are the favourites. They've got the best player in the world at the moment, and not just because she was voted the best player in the world by the World Rugby panel, but Ellie Kildunn, she just... really scythed through New Zealand the last time. That was a real wake-up call, that WXV. I think that, there's just a suggestion that maybe the Black Ferns had been a little bit of not a hangover, but a spillover of some sort from winning the World Cup. Some of the Sevens players who I think had such a profound effect on the standards in that team weren't there. Be interesting to see what happens in that regard. I mean, do you just love the idea of Georgia Miller sort of coming on sort of halfway through a big game?
Yeah.
And maybe they weren't quite as fit as they'd been for the World Cup when the likes of Sarah Hirini, was setting such a high bar, and so they know what areas they've got to work on, and I wouldn't doubt their ability. I know they lost to Ireland last year. I can't see them letting a result like that happen again, but the team that everyone has to beat is England. They've set the standard. There've been massive investment in women's sport in the UK generally, but ever since they started that big lottery.
Yeah, it's been a lot of money.
And it's one of the sports that's benefited, perhaps to the detriment of their sevens program, but it's made them a real force in the game. So, August, England, World Cup, it's going to be huge. It'll be a massive challenge for New Zealand to go back to back, but, let's wish them the best.
Rugby, people. We are a weekend and a bit away from the Six Nations, as I say, Friday, February the 14th, Valentine's Day. Romantic day to start Super Rugby. Tony, I look forward to it and look forward to being in touch all year.
Yeah, cheers, mate.
DSPN.